Let's see. Adam, we give another minute or two. I was wondering if you wanted to check your audio as somebody that I expect might be speaking. And anybody else who thinks they might be speaking fairly regularly, do you want to check your audio before we get started? We'll also need a minute taker.
Hi, Karen. Good morning.
Good morning, Roman. That's true. I'm guessing that you have lots of practice. Good morning, Adam. Okay. I guess it's not morning for everybody, but...
Yeah, this is Bill as well. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Bill. Great. Thank you. All right. I guess it is day 3 of the meeting, so maybe I don't need to be quite as worried about people's tools working correctly as anticipated. All right. All right, so it's 7:03. We'll go ahead and get started. I think there's only 1 or 2 people I thought might be here that I don't see at the moment, so we'll go ahead and get going. Good morning, afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Sakam Working Group at IETF110. As a reminder, this is an IETF meeting. We have the note well that you will have seen other times this week. You also agreed to this when you registered for the meeting. All IETF activities are covered by this note well. It includes all of the listed policies and procedures. The agenda that we have for today is here. So the first thing I mentioned in the quick warm-up was we were going to need a minute taker. Do we have a minute taker? Note taker.
This is Bill. I can do some.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
This is Bill. I can take notes.
Fantastic. There is the committee tool if you want to use that as well. Or you can take them separately. As a note taker, you can choose your poison. So that's the minutes. The agenda is below. It's a pretty short agenda. In hindsight, I'm not sure why I requested 2 hours. It's possible that it's because that little reload everything from the last meeting is just a tiny bit too convenient. So apologies to the scheduling folks. We are probably not going to need 2 hours. So first up on the agenda is COSWID. There you will have seen a bunch of GitHub traffic on this. And so as I kind of suspected, Hank, would you like to talk to what the current status of the COSWID document is? And
yeah, hi, this is Hank. Actually, I would like to do that. My dear co-editor Dave Waltermeyer is also dearly missing right now, so I will jump in here and improvise if that is fine. Also, I do not mind that we have scheduled 2 hours because we could go and run through all the restated and requalified issues from Roman. I don't know in what order we want to do that. I can give a concise overview of the status right now. We can do it afterwards, or we can do it now. What's your preference?
Well, I mean, I think it's Dave Waldemar was one of the people I was looking for. So maybe we will do the meeting part first, and then we will go back through and go through the issues, if that's okay with you. That
Yeah,
also
that is
might
fine
give
with
us
me.
a little bit more time to get Dave here. The only thing is, and I probably should have reached out to them individually, was I was looking for Dave. I was also looking for Kathleen because of her architecture comments. So we'll do that at the end of the meeting. So then,
But I can give a short summary about what we're
that's
talking.
a short summary would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. So again, this is Henk. Hi, everybody. One of the editors of the CoSWIT ID. Yeah, as Karen highlighted, there was a lot of traffic on the GitHub tracker due to our attempts to address Roman's and Kathleen's latest input. There are some logistical steps still open. They are basically all IANA or registry based, like media types and such. So that's on Dave's plate. I can't give updates on that today. Skimming the list of reiterated open issues from Roman, I assume by just reading that list that I think like 90% of that is covered and actually is addressed in some text, or as has been deemed basically not applicable. It's only a few cases. So we can run through these later. And our estimate is that, yeah, this is unfortunately a little bit slow. I would like to see this a little bit faster, but we are at the end of the tunnel here. There's not only light at the end of the tunnel, but we are at the end of the tunnel. So I think this is the last round. We need to ship this, and yeah, details upcoming. I might want to have a small report here on this front. We are preparing right at the moment work in the REDS working group that will make use of CoSWIT and create a RIM wrapper around that, and will have a complement to CoSWIT. We currently call CoMIT, the concise module identifier for the hardware components that software resides on, to identify these. That can be composed to composite devices of various complexity, and also addresses the problem, so to speak, of firmware that does not reside in a file system. Just as a reminder, CoSWITs or SWITs in general are based on rely on file system existence. Firmware sometimes does not bring its own file system. Some do, but then again, there's firmwares in the ranges of hundreds of megabytes. Smaller firmware typically doesn't, and so it is feasible to cover reference values and hashes and data about that on the hardware side, because it's about the firm things here. So so that is upcoming, just as a highlight, and that also was one of the implementers here consumed CoSWIT and therefore created new running code, which is very helpful. There are 3 implementations now out there that 2 of them freely available. One of them is used internally with Red Hat. That exist, and provided feedback in the course of this relatively long working group last call. So that's my report on this front. And yes, I talked a little bit.
Okay.
Hey, Hank, can you comment on Lawrence's GitHub issue?
Yeah, we addressed his issue actually to some extent, and then he restated more. So what we did is we provided a single rule in Cdda, that is the root rule now, that covers all combinations of tagging, signing tags. We have 2 corresponding sections in the ID. One of them is appropriately called tagged CoSWITs, and the other one is signed CoSWITs. There, we also made a very early on statement here that Cdda tags are not software tags. So software tag is a software SWITs, effectively SWIT tags are tag term originating from the SWIT and ISO domain, and Cdda tags is a tag term originating from, of course, the Cdda WG here in IETF. So these are not the same tags, and we disambiguate them early on in the section that is called tagged CoSWIT. And we also play with the redundancy to make it very clear that tagged CoSWIT tags, this name includes 2 tag types. That is unfortunate, but it can't be avoided. We have to live with this terminology. It's not from us. We do not make that choices that are now conflicting here, but we can disambiguate them. So having said that, you can, for example, tag the outer structure of a signed CoSWIT. In this case, you are tagging prefix and everything with the CBORD tag in front of the cozy tag of the cozy envelope in which a CoSWIT then resides, and due to the signing via cozy, that's the thing. You can omit that tag. You can have it redundantly. You can add the CoSWIT CBORD tag outside of the cozy envelope, and then again inside in front of the actual CoSWIT. So redundant tagging, we allow from that. That's not super cool, but sometimes we have these policies in companies that say we never touch a SWIT. We keep it pristine, and we have the policies that say that has to be unmodified. And then you can't strip a tag from that when you sign it, if it's an unsigned tag. And so you can leave it there now and just add it again on the outside. So have this tag twice. So all these combinations of sign and tagging are now covered with new Cdda. That is also mandatory. There was a comment about how does this really work? Why is this in the appendix? And we're like, okay, then it is a normative change. We move that up into the document. It's the end of the body here. And basically add Cdda that's also normative, reflecting the normative language, and tell people how this is done. So for signing and tagging. Then after doing all this and having this one type for the Ietf claims that Lawrence want to use CoSWIT in, Lawrence said, yeah, but you don't need an outside tag. I don't want that. And I was like, yeah, that's fine that you don't want that. Some people might. So the option not having it on the outside is there. So is it possible to include that in a way that Lawrence wants? But it is also possible in theory to include it now in Ietf in a way that Lawrence does not prefer, I would say. Having a tagged, CBORD tagged CoSWIT in a semantically well-defined claim is again some redundancy. If the claim label tells you this is a CoSWIT, you factually do not have to tag the CBORD item with the CBORD tag that is saying this is a CoSWIT. But I think, again, due to supply chain procedures, there might be instances where this cannot be avoided due to having things pristine and policies telling you may not touch this. I think that's fringe cases in general that should be possible. And I hope, I have not talked with Lawrence about that, and I don't think he's here. No, he isn't. So that is a thing that we have to align on still, but I'm relatively confident that we are like 99.5% to the text that Lawrence wants. So that's, I think, covered.
Okay.
All right. That sounds good. So at this stage, I mean, you said earlier that we had a few remaining open issues. Milestone-wise, do you have a rough estimate of how long you think it'll take to get through those, or is it kind of depend on the issues?
Yeah, it's a little bit. I think my fellow co-editor. I think getting us on in the same meeting is the biggest challenge. Actually, it's not the content. So we, as there was a cutoff, this kind of was pressing, and we managed that. Unfortunately, now as the cutoff is past behind us, it is relatively hard to find a coherent session at the moment. That is on us. That is not the problem of the issues, and that's not the problem of this working group. That is we are the reasons for this, unfortunately. Having said that, I still think there are only the logistic issues of registry, and maybe a few of Romans are still open. So my guesstimate would be, if we get a meeting done or 2 meetings, we are done. This should be done in two 1-hour meetings. So that's my premise here for guesstimate of end of April. Yeah, and we are that bad at meeting.
Okay, so you don't see too much work left. It's just a scheduling issue.
Yeah, it's a scheduling issue. It's nothing. Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
All right, great. So with that,
It's Roman
And
jumping
the
in
slight
here. Carried
modification we've done to the, go ahead, Roman.
Yeah, so to clarify, a scheduling issue means next month, so we're done by April?
Yeah,
With
I hope
those
we're done
revisions,
at the
as we
end of
understand?
April. Yeah, I think we need 6 weeks to do 2 hours. That is my my new from speaking from life experience, my new guesstimate here.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you very much.
And again, I would like to, sorry to interrupt, and again, I would like to run through the open items with Roman to clarify some of these, because I think Roman did not find them intuitively addressed. If that's fine with the group.
Yeah, that's fine. So I haven't modified the agenda that I'm showing, but basically we're going to go through this agenda, and then at the end of it, we'll go after the way ahead. The any other business will be stepping through the issues, if that's okay with you.
That's absolutely fine with me. Thank you a lot.
Okay, so next up is the SACM architecture document. Adam and Bill are both here. I believe, Bill, you're going to lead the conversation. Is that correct? I guess I could kick this off with, there's been no update to the document, and the last email traffic on this was, but you can stay speaking, Bill. There's no update to the document, and Kathleen sent comments about 6 weeks ago, but we haven't, I haven't seen any response to those, so I'm not sure if you all have been discussing them in the background. So with that, architecture update, please.
That's pretty much the update. I can defer to Adam as well on anything further going on there. But like you said, the last real activity was in fact Kathleen's comments on that. So I think it kind of rolls into some of the way ahead and pieces of that, and you know, getting people's opinion and feedback on where they want to go. So
Okay.
hopefully see what Adam has to say as well.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, I think Bill you might be being a little bashful, but he is also working on an implementation of the ecosystem. It's not exactly, from what I understand, like to the letter of what the draft is today. Like I think in implementing, Bill, you may have learned a few things that might find their way into the draft. But really, yeah, at this point, we have the draft in its current state. We have I guess a nominal implementation, like very basic. We want to see this working type of implementation, not anything that's deployable or, you know, product ready or anything like that. But mostly, what I'd like to see is you know, additional feedback. I know we got excellent feedback from both Roman and Kathleen. Yeah, I think that's basically where we are. Bill, if I mischaracterized the implementation that you're working on, I apologize.
Hey, Bill, can you take a moment to talk about the implementation? Yeah, I can do that. Honestly, that's what I was just going to talk about, was the fact that what I've done is basically the product of kind of my own personal hackathon in the past 2.5 days. But I have a bit of what I'd like to call a few of the components working, and working, I'll say loosely. It's basically a management and orchestration component that can basically interface with a collection component to perform some hard-coded collections using SCAP related content. It's just some basic, some very, very, very simple oval instructions. And that collection has hooked into the tool that we happen to have here at CIS, amazingly enough. And but it can send messages to ensure that different components are awake. If anybody's looked at the draft, there's an operation in there called the heartbeat. And so that's basically just sending a ping message to each of the components. It does that. I can onboard a couple of the components like the orchestration and collection components. So those messages, that message exchange and a small amount of capability information can be exchanged, and then basically publishing the collection instructions to have that collector perform collection. That's as far as I got. I haven't gotten back to any sort of persisting any of the collected posture attributes to any sort of repository yet. Like I said, 2 days.
And is there a message framework you built on top of?
I'm using the Opendxl. Is a kind of an open source kind of layer on top of MQTT.
Oh, Roman's in queue.
Yeah, sorry, I guess we don't have enough people that we really need to worry about this. So, Bill, kind of help me understand. I get the implementation you did relative to the text of the architecture, but what SACM technologies are you using to instantiate that architecture?
All right, so I'm gonna jump in for Bill for nominally of. So what do you mean by that, Roman?
Yeah, so this is a little bit of, I guess, I mean, I'm thrilled we have an implementation because it makes the architecture real. What I'm trying to get my head wrapped around is, you know, what is kind of the architecture really codifying, and are there technologies we're developing that would and that we feel we need to standardize as part of this process? So long term, I mean, there were a bunch of questions about, you know, we got some reviews on the architecture. What's unclear to me is how will we know we're done with the architecture document? What more needs to get done? And is there additional work that is related to actual protocols and standards that we need to develop as part of that architecture? I mean, so is the architecture a SACM architecture, or is it a series of, in my head, like operational practices about how to compose existing tech?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's really what I think the SACM-y things that are about it are kind of dealing with the roles and the interfaces and kind of the different message structures that are transported back and forth between components. So I think implementation of each of the components is however folks would like to do it. It's just a matter of the different types of messages over whatever you know, kind of operational interface that's being defined in the draft, and that's kind of whatever the taxonomy or ontology section or whatever. I think it's labeled taxonomy. So that sort of defines the different topics that are communicated over, the things that are, you know, where things get published or subscribed to, or the different sort of directed message topics that are made available as well. So that's really what, I guess that's the most SACM-y portion of it.
So Bill, can I just clarify if I heard that correctly? I mean, so the SACM-y portion is really the message formats for like orchestration and capability?
Yes.
Exchange?
Yes.
Does that answer the question, Roman?
I guess I may have a different mental model than others, but I look at what the SACM working group has actually published or is in flight. We have CoSWID, we have a poster enterprise use case, we have requirements, and we have software inventory messaging. So when we say we're doing SACM-y things and we're rolling that in, I guess I don't see where the working group developed technology is being inserted here. I can see that we're talking about APIs, but we're inventing them whole cloth in this document, it seems. And so I'm just trying to get a sense of whether this architecture document is tipping or hinting that there is new standards work to be done, or what we're trying to do is develop a self-contained document, and that's going to be the end of it. And this is, again, just tipping my hand. I mean, I'm trying to understand what the way ahead is, and I'm trying to understand whether this is an architecture that's defining more work that we need to do, or if it's not that, how do we get to closure? I mean, how do we know this document is done? Adam?
I guess I'll just talk. Yeah. Okay. So, sorry, I tried to raise hands and all that. Roman, that's a really good question. So, I mean, and this might be a discussion for the way ahead as well. So in my mind right now, the architecture draft, as Bill was mentioning, Bill and Chris were mentioning, it defines components, roles, the interfaces, and right now, like in the notional implementation that Bill's been working on, we're using essentially SCAP information, messages to go back and forth. Like that's the payload, if you will, between all these different components. When SACM first started, we had the idea of evolving that portion of I guess this architecture in a sense. So we had the idea of, bringing in a way to model assets, a way to improve on XCCDF, possibly the way to improve OVAL. I think back in the day, OVAL was even submitted to the working group as a way for MITRE to kind of say it's, to kind of bless the effort, I guess. So to answer your question, really, I think requires additional discussion. We could leave the architecture the way it is and just define components, the interfaces, and sorry, Hank, I know you're probably cringing at all the different terms that I'm using, and then make the message payloads that go back and forth kind of like more extensible in a sense. So it could handle SCAP, it could handle other types of messages, or we could do that and move beyond that and try to, I don't want to say reinvent, but create the checklist format, create a better OVAL, if you will, things of that nature. Like we tried to do this information model back in the day that was massive. Like I don't think we need that, but anyway, that's my thinking on it. So I don't know if that helps characterize what it is you're after, but maybe it does.
Yeah, I mean, now hearing that's helpful. So maybe I didn't hear it when Bill was saying it. So kind of sorry, Bill, that you're defining roles and responsibilities. It's an API kind of sorts. There's a decision point here about whether there's working group specificity, but the contribution of the implementation that Bill was talking about, correct me if I have it wrong, is that you took the roles in this document as they were kind of defined and found a series of kind of technologies that is able to kind of demonstrate a manifestation of said architecture. Fair?
I think so, yes.
Okay, thanks.
I guess the last, if I may, like the last point that I'd like to kind of share, and it kind of goes along a little bit of what Adam was kind of talking about more extensible message payloads and things of that nature, like the some of the stuff that I kind of discovered in this while I was kind of trying to put something together was in the kind of capability discovery or capability advertisement between the different components. Like a certain piece could say, defines, like I speak oval, or I understand COSWID and things of that nature. And I think that those some or many of those things could be defined in the draft as well, to kind of help illustrate the different I'll call it languages that components can speak. So that was also something that was helping to, like, it was giving me information as I was hacking some things together.
Yeah, I mean, what you're kind of saying makes kind of total sense to me, kind of, Bill, about how they could suggest future work. I guess I'm coming from the perspective of who would do that work, and I'm not gonna. We can save that for the way ahead, because I'm a little skeptical that we have the bandwidth to pick that work up.
Sure. In some ways, I'd say it could apply to any group that needs to, I guess, transport specific message payloads to other components within the ecosystem. Use big words.
Authors have a sense of what the next step would be?
Is that a question that we should do it way ahead, Roman, or do you want to do that now?
Way.
Bill, do you have something for that?
I'm sorry, I was doing some notes, so I'm repeat the question. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Kathleen.
Sorry, yeah, my question was, I'm just trying to understand what the next step is, and how will we as a working group know we're ready to go to last call, for example?
Yeah, I guess, Roman, I was saying that maybe we should do that in the way ahead conversation. Do you want to talk about it with just regards to this, or do you want to talk about it with way ahead?
Talk about it with way ahead. I was just repeating the question since Bill didn't catch it.
Okay, sorry, Kathleen.
And I am sorry, I just moved my headset, so you might hear a spinny toy in the background. So I think what Adam and Bill are saying, and we, I think what Adam and Bill are saying makes sense. And, just in terms of how do we do posture assessment, how do we do the things SACM sets out to do, backing it up with the implementation is very good. And then yesterday I had presented in RATS. It might be interesting to, and that would expand this, so it would make it take longer, but it might be interesting to also include the intersection of other types of work to ease posture assessment and just advance this. But that would make it bigger and take longer. So I don't know if there's tolerance for that.
Putting it down as a note, but I'm going to table the conversation till after we when we get to the way ahead, Kathleen. Any other questions on architecture that aren't?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was
plan
talking
forward?
away and nobody. I apparently muted myself, so I'm not sure what anybody has heard that I just said. But anyway, that's beside the point. So we have status on COSA, we have status on SACM, we have, and then the next document is on the agenda because it is a document we have been working on, but there have been no updates and it's expired. And I wanted it on here to sort of complete the status review before we moved way ahead. So does anybody want to say anything? Any of the authors want to say anything about the Rowley configuration checklist extension?
This is Bill. There hasn't been a lot of work on that probably since early December. We had Stephen Banghart and Gabe Alford from Red Hat and I had kind of regularly scheduled meetings for a little while. You know, I'd say since the previous IETF, and that was moving along nicely, I feel like, and part of it was focused on the draft and getting it ready, and part of it was focused on, I think, Red Hat trying to do an implementation of it, you know, at the same time of Rowley in general. But then Gabe Alford left Red Hat, and it pretty much stopped after the work pretty much stopped after that. That's been the last update, was probably early December.
Okay.
So if
Go ahead,
I could, yeah, if I could ask kind of a question. So, you know, this is something we have a milestone for. We have an expired draft, and we don't even have an adopted working group document. You know, do we really have the energy to do this work? Because I asked in August, we did a call for adoption, and we did not have enough energy to even adopt this document. So I'm a little kind of confused. Maybe I missed the interim, which is, I know we talked about at the interim, but what are the facts that have changed on the ground? In August, we couldn't even get enough folks to marshal up enough support to adopt this. So what's the thinking here?
I think that this is really on me more so than the authors. It was basically, I wanted all of the documents on here that we had any progress on before I moved to the review of milestones and the way ahead discussion, because that tees up the conversation the way I organized it.
Okay,
So.
perfect, thanks.
Okay. So now that we've gone through the 3 documents that we're currently making some progress on, or that we've at least had contributions on, I'm going to go to the way ahead, and I wanted to preface this a little bit with, this is all just my opinion, and Chris and I had a really quick conversation about this, and Roman had sent an email a little while back that I didn't really think all the way through until I started trying to write slides on this. So our current milestones, this is what's currently listed. And I went through all of these, and this explains how I constructed the agenda. And this is where we are with these milestones. The ones that I marked through are things that, so, you know, to sort of refresh our memory, I guess it's now maybe, it must have been like the 2017 timeframe, we did a rechartering, and in that rechartering, we're like, okay, we need to have really concrete milestones that we can make progress on. And these were the milestones that we published, and clearly we're not updating the dates on them. A couple of these items we haven't gotten any input on at all, and that is the 2 that I have marked out. The Rowley document we have, as Roman has already indicated, we have no adopted working group document on this yet. I actually marked the software descriptor as I think I marked that one wrong because I think that one was decided to be set. I actually confused the status of software descriptor and configuration checklist. This is what happens when you do slides late at night. Architecture, as we've already discussed, was last updated in September, and CoSWID has been submitted to the IESG, and it is slowly making progress, and we've talked about that. So our milestones look pretty bleak. In addition to that, our mailing list is pretty much, there's been no activity since the last meeting except a whole bunch of GitHub activity on the CoSWID document and Kathleen's review of architecture. So basically, what are we doing here? So this is my list of next steps that we could take. And again, this is my opinion as teased out of conversations with Chris and Roman, but was not reviewed with them, so I get all the blame. Proposal A, drop all the milestones which aren't CoSWID or architecture. See if we can get some realistic milestones on the table for the architecture, and then add a milestone about closing or rechartering by the end of this year. I do believe, like, I didn't look up the exact date, but it seems to me like 6 months or a year ago, we were like, we're going to keep the working group around for another 6 months to see if we can get to the end of our work or get some energy. And we're basically rehaving that conversation. Proposal B, so basically it's proposal A was a close or recharter. Proposal B was to finish CoSWID and pause the working group for a year to see if contributions and maturity is forthcoming, especially in the architecture space, or proposal C that I haven't thought of. So that was where we are with that. So comments, questions, what do people think we need to be doing? Wow.
Sorry, I know it seems like nobody's talking. I think I'm just taking some time to digest a little bit. Sorry, this is Adam. I guess we're supposed to say that, right?
Well, I'll give you a break, and that is what it's almost 7 a.m. right, Adam?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Hi, Jess. I can't find the hand raise tool. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Oh, there it is. Right next to the mute audio, Jessica. Wake up. All right. I'm kind of leaning a little bit towards proposal A. I think it would be interesting to me to see the architecture mature more. I think with the attestation proposal in RATS and with some related work we have going on in OCA in terms of the Sakam or the SCAP architecture, I think there might still be goodness to the architecture. I'd like to let it carry on if the authors are still interested and if they still have bandwidth. So yeah, I guess that's my approach right now.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree. I mean, I think the thing that concerns me, and I think the thing that's concerned me for a little while is the participation, right? So, I mean, Bill and I, mainly Bill, you know, we've been working on the architecture for a while. Granted, it hasn't been consistent, right? It's like a sine wave, right? Like we get involved with it and then other things overtake with priority and then we can come back to it and so on. I guess I have no problem with proposal A. I would just, we'll keep putting out calls for participation, I guess, right? Like, so when we see reviews or like when Roman posted his review and Kathleen posted hers, yeah, I think it would just be nice to have additional participation in these things. If that makes sense.
So I have a question, and Adam, before you kind of before you walk away, which is, do you believe do you have any feeling, I don't know if it's a belief or if, as an evidence by anything, do you have any opinion on, is it easier to participate against a, kind of a demo piece of code versus, I mean, I've read the architecture draft. I'm not sure really what the meaningful feedback can be. Yeah, we've had this conversation, and I know we've had this, without exploring some of it. And so I obviously have a bias, but what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's what I think I would ideally like to see is 2 implementations of what we have written, or close to what we have written, so that they inform what we have written, right? And I think we've said that for a little while at this point, like that the draft is where it is, but we can't, let me rephrase that, we probably shouldn't move too much more on the draft without experimenting and ensuring that it's actually, that is something that can be efficaciously implemented. And that to me means that we should have at least 1, preferably at least 2 implementations that could potentially work together, right? Like,
so,
go ahead.
And this isn't necessarily just an Adam question, but you're using Opendxl.
Correct.
Does anybody else in the working group have an opinion of, is that something to build on? I mean, there are objections to building prototypes on top of that. I mean, it's obviously not an IETF technology. I'd love to hear some feedback on that, because presumably if we did some kind of alternate implementation that might be able to work with the CIS implementation, sorry, Bill, if that's not how I should phrase it, maybe it's the Bill implementation, then, does anybody have objections against Opendxl?
Just a quick comment before anyone objects or not. And I think, Bill, you might have to keep me honest, but I think the use of Opendxl is something that we can rely on for implementations. It's not something we would require per the architecture. I would prefer to see the architecture draft message fabric agnostic.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think the funny thing for me right now is that I expected this to be the animated part of the meeting, and I seem to have taken all the air out of the room. Go ahead, Hank.
Yeah, so I really want to have A, and then people have to do bandwidth to do that, as just highlighted, and I'm not doing A at the moment, as apparent, it's very apparent. So I can only commit to B, and I would really like to see A happening without being a part of the solution right now. So that's why I was hesitant to speak up. So because what's that kind of an opinion, you know, not helping. That's only wish list, no contribution. Well, that is not helping. So that is why I'm speaking last. Yeah.
Well, that's helpful, actually, Hank. So if others are in that boat, that the chairs, the AD, we would really like to hear that, actually.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead.
Adding to this, Bill was talking about, and it's a side conversation here with chat about that also, about MQTT as the broker solution here used. So personally, having worked with XMPP, MQTT, AMQP, and everything, what we internally used when building broker or interbroker systems for years now, even at IETF hackathons at, I don't know, 90-something IETFs, we used Kafka. Because Kafka was basically the broker tool to rule them all. It was so easy to implement that we could combine Yang push with XMPP, and because the interfaces were, I don't know, a little bit clunky sometimes, we just used Kafka as a broker in between. It was easier to write anything else. So that is what we were stuck with. So when I think about implementing Sakam, for example, at some point, I think that the broker should be exchangeable, and that's what we need an architecture for. The architecture tells you what solution will fit here. MQTT is the proof of concept, and if MQTT can do the trick, Kafka can also do it. And so that is something I would voice interest in. And but I guess that in the current IETF iteration, I would have not even close to any bandwidth left for that. But I think that the idea of an architecture is exactly about that, and Bill's code is facilitating a proof of concept for exactly that, and that is nice to see, because I then will, I think, have another cool tool to work with, and if the SACM architecture fits that, I would be very, very happy.
Okay. So go ahead, Roman.
Yeah, I was just wanted to, if we got to the point where no one else had additional comments, I wanted to share my particular bias, if that's okay.
Yeah, just let me go back and clarify one tiny thing, which was related to the Rowley documents. So we adopted the Rowley software descriptor. It's expired. We did a Rowley configuration checklist, which was which is still an individual submission, and it has expired. So that's why I have not put Rowley on either of the Rowley documents on this list. And I think possibly the primary proponents of the Rowley documents are not in the meeting this morning. So anyway, so now you can go ahead, Roman.
Thanks. So I guess my personal observation is that I see a lot of aspiration to potentially do more, but not a lot of energy or plan how to get there. So we, for a long time, have been limping along for a very wide scope in the charter, but the work that we're doing is not commensurate with the wide scope we have. So I think really to get us to closure, I think we need to focus all our energy on finishing the very few limited things that we have, which I believe are some of the milestones that's outlined in Proposal A. Then I think really is a question of what happens after that. And as a forcing function to make sure we have sufficient energy, what I would like for us to do is to actually modify, if we decide we want more, we would actually modify the charter to be very specific to the new things we would take on, because I think the current charter language you have, frankly, doesn't work for said future. And if it turns out we have all that energy, wonderful, we can kind of do that. But what works with Proposal A is that we have a switch that says if we don't have energy, which frankly, the last kind of 2 years on the mailing list have demonstrated, we have a graceful exit where we can declare success on the focus things that we have. what I would like to hear, I didn't hear anyone pushing for it, for proposal B, actually. I heard everyone push for proposal A, so this may be kind of a non sequitur. I think that some of the challenges with proposal B is when you put a working group on pause, that's not an official thing, and we don't have a good criteria to decide how to light that back up, frankly. And the appeal to me for proposal A is we have an approach to light that up. And then selfishly for me about why even keep the working group open as long as January 2022 is that I envision that there's going to be some IESG time to iterate, revise comments on the architecture and the code switch, and that's sometimes a little bit of an unpredictable timeline. And having a working group to help resolve those comments is actually a lot easier than one that's disbanded.
Right. Okay.
But I didn't hear anyone advocating for anything other than proposal A.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything besides proposal A either. The other observation I would make on your comment about narrowing the scope is I feel like the last time we rechartered, we had that exact same conversation where we were like, we're going to narrow our scope. And I guess from your perspective, the scope is still much broader than what we're actually accomplishing. And we've been down this road once already where we tried to narrow it and get concise things. So
completely agree.
So given that I'm not seeing a ton of people in the queue at the moment, and I see a +1 from Ira in the chat for proposal A, I think we will do a really quick confirm this on the mailing list, but the consensus of this meeting definitely appears to be proposal A, I guess there's really not much more to talk about here on this. So,
fine question, Karen, if we're really heading down the path of proposal A, which is what it looks like, there's, I think, two potential, there's one negotiation thing that if we can try to get feedback on as well, which is the dates of December 2020 and January 2022 were added. Do we think we can finish the document sooner? Is December too much time?
I can offer a comment on that. It's kind of off the cuff, but relative to what I was saying earlier about preferring to have one, preferably two implementations rolling on it, and assuming that those implementations will help inform the shape of the draft, I would say we could leave it as is right now and see if we can pull it in after getting one or two implementations more fully baked.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. I think the other thing is, the December 21, I don't remember if that was something you proposed or something I came up with, Roman.
Guy said that date.
Okay. And I guess we have no idea what the future of IETF meetings is, but I think in particular, some working groups work really well without face-to-face meetings, and for better or for worse, this appears to be a working group that does derive some energy and motivation from a regular face-to-face meeting, and I think we were making progress in hackathons, and I think it's proving to be a lot more difficult for us in this world. So, all right. So proposal A is our choice of the meeting, and we will reconfirm it on the mailing list. And that takes us back to any other business. The only any other business I had was, I don't think, and Chris, you can speak up here as well. Oh, I see. We don't have plans for a virtual. The problem with parallel chat streams is you then lose track. Oh, okay, Kathleen.
So,
Yeah, I
so-
just have, I find the energy associated with face-to-faces sort of revitalizes my motivation. But anyway,
I would agree. Is it better for us to actually? I know that if we schedule, and Roman, you can tell me I'm wrong. If we schedule kind of semi-regular design type meetings, then those have to be announced in minutes and the rest, right? Just like a virtual interim.
So technically, design team meetings don't need that, but if we do an interim, we would.
right.
And so, Karen, I would ask the group, would we rather do, have a supported bi-weekly, maybe, more than that, less than that, I don't know, or would we rather schedule an interim?
Yeah, if I could repeat that kind of, Chris, in another way, if we really say December 2021 is the date that we either have it done or we're wrapping up, that's 2 more formal meetings. That's the summer one and the fall one. I can't prognosticate, and this is not an official statement kind of for anyone, but I don't know whether we're going to really meet in person in the summertime. So best case, we're maybe talking about 1 in-person meeting. And if we really just have 2 more meetings to close this, I really think we need more intermediate milestones to make sure we make progress.
Yeah, I might have, my commentary on face-to-face meetings was more about was less about setting our milestones. I think there's 4 months between now and the next meeting, or almost 5 months. I don't think we can sit around and wait. If we really think we're going to meet the end of the year deadline, I think we need to see some progress between now and then. The question is whether that progress needs to be driven by the chairs scheduling virtual interim meetings, or whether it needs to be driven by the primary editors of the architecture document scheduling architecture editing meetings. So I mean, perhaps Chris and I could have done a better job of scheduling virtual interims, although between the last meeting and this one was kind of tough, I think. But do you all want a virtual interim, or Adam? I mean, you and Bill, what do you think? I mean, I think we could make the design team meetings. I mean, we can announce them on the mailing list. Anybody can come. It's really about who's driving the agenda.
Yeah, so I'm kind of having an open conversation with Bill in front of everybody, but to me, I think that the more frequently we meet, the better. But that said, Bill's the one who really does most of the implementation stuff, like all of it actually. And so it's really going to depend on his availability, that sort of thing. But I mean, to me, the more frequent meetings, things just get done, right? You can chunk things up into smaller bites. It's easier to take those smaller bites. It's more regular, it's more front of mind, all of that. So my preference would be to meet more frequently than scheduling virtual interims. Bill, feel free to throw me under a bus, or, push me off a cliff, whatever makes sense.
I would agree. And, I can take an action item. I'll have to go, back to my boss, who's kind of a hard case about scheduling. Yeah, we'll take that as an action to find times where we can get some editing meetings scheduled.
Okay. So the action will be for between now and the next IETF meeting will be for you all to schedule meetings and report back to the working group. And Chris, I don't know if you want to speak up on this. Do you have do you want to plan for, penciling in a virtual interim halfway between, or do we want to just?
I think a short virtual interim is probably a good thing. If the design meetings actually take, then it just puts a marker in the ground of progress. I would say if we have something to talk about, a virtual interim, for folks who may not be involved in the design meeting, say a person like Hank who can't commit to that might be useful. Hank, for folks like you, Jessica, maybe, would you guys find that useful? I don't want to have a meeting that no one feels the need to have.
I absolutely would like to spend some regular interval time on getting up to things and discussing why things are there, how they are in implementation. I have to admit, I have no idea how the implementation looks like. I'm not even sure where to look at it. And so starting these meetings for catching up is also there's a blocker in my schedule. I call in, there is time reserved for that. That's easier than to say I will do it at some point. So yes, structure is very welcome here, for me at least.
Same for me. I'm not really good this pandemic about actually following up on shit, but if you put it on my calendar, I might. I guess I would like to see us use a little bit of time to talk about deconflicting a bunch of efforts as well. I think Kathleen's attestation document has a role here. I know there's related work in OCA that's very similar to what Adam and Bill are trying to do here. I'd like for us to take some time to really sit down and figure out what are we doing and where are we doing it. With the knowledge that, I know Adam and Bill are rowing this boat alone. So I think we need to do some resource allocation as well, to the extent possible.
So Jessica, do you want to have that kind of deconfliction here, or do you envision that it some of these follow-on meetings?
I was envisioning it in the follow-on meetings only because I think there's a lot of nuance to a lot of these things. But I think we need to set that scope early enough to be sure all the right participants are there.
Okay. Thank you.
So maybe a virtual interim to discuss architecture and to discuss deconfliction announced well in advance of when it's going to be scheduled.
Yeah, and I think Jessica, Adam, others will need your help to get maybe some of the non-IETF participants to at least have one conversation with us.
Absolutely.
Okay. So coming out of this, Adam and Bill are going to schedule design team meetings, design team/editing meetings, and Chris and I will schedule a virtual interim in roughly 2 months. The agenda of the virtual interim will be a touch point on where the architecture document is, and it will be deconfliction. Does that sound like our plan? All right. Any other business besides Hank's desire to go through the issues of the COSWID? Okay. So that is the approach we will take. At this point, I'm going to close the main meeting and hand it over to, well, we didn't actually ask Roman if he wanted to work on issues now or if he wanted to do it later. So perhaps we should do that.
Accelerate closure in the document. I'm happy to walk through that list. From my perspective, it's what I put on the mailing list. I put a link in the chat as well, and it's also in the document history. I'm good.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Somebody said something. Let me let Hank share his screen.
Just share if possible.
Yeah, let me grant you the screen. Oh wait, I have to unshare mine first. Hold on a sec. Can you
Bill, you have
ask again?
something while we're getting this going?
Go ahead.
What is my
If
screen sharing?
needed notes on this issues discussion, or if we're good on notes.
Hank, I wasn't making this part of the minutes, so do you want this minuted, or do you?
Actually, I'm not sure. Yes, that seems like a good idea to capture maybe basing minutes on the email or something. I'm going to share my entire screen, which is typically a very bad idea, but I want to share two windows at the same time. So first we go all the way down.
Oh, wow.
And then this, does it show appropriately to some extent? Two windows should be visible.
Yes.
Cool. So
All right,
yeah,
so
that's. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say, okay, thank you, Bill, for taking what notes you can. And so at this point, I'm considering this to be an editing meeting, so those who are not necessarily involved may feel free to step away. All right, Hank, you are now running the meeting.
So to speak. Of course you are. So thanks, Roman, for the time. I will not be able to speak with confidence to everything because some of this, and this is the commit from Dave Waltermeyer to the text, so we can dig up some of the items, but I'm familiar with most, like with 80 to 90% of the items. So starting with the very
Dave's on now, Hank.
Dave's on now. Hi, Dave. Why am I doing this? Dave could also talk to this. Does your mic work? Dave?
Yeah, I'm not going, Dave, but we've ended the meeting and now we've transitioned to editing CoSWID, and we didn't notice when you joined. So can you speak, or you?
Yeah, maybe he's here in his avatar is here. Okay, let's start this in any case. So running through the items as I see them here right now. You annotated them with since when does this apply, or when did you check this? I think it's the first one. Starting with the first.
Yeah, the nomenclature of the draft version. So I think we've seen 15, 16, and 17. 15 was the original review. So where possible, I tried to annotate it in such a way where it was clear that the comment was first made in that document. In some cases, text changes have occurred or discussion has occurred. So I annotated it below, sometimes talking about multiple version numbers, as you might see in the next entry around section 2.9.4. where there's commentary on the 16 and the 17 as well.
Now I get it. So the stars indicate the item, and you have multiple. I see now. Okay, now I get it. I was a little bit. This is even less than I thought, because the stars indicated. Yeah, I see now. Thank you. First item is since 15. So the initial response of the editors was, we don't get the question. So let me try to reflect what we understand, or what I now understand here. You hint at versioning beyond the native support of CBOR. The versioning of CBOR is called tagging. Do you mean that?
Yeah, I mean, what I meant there was there is no version field being jammed into the CoSWID. I was checking whether that's an explicit design. That's an explicit design. And it's really as simple as, do we need a tag in the CoSWID that says this is version 1.0 or whatever we want to call it?
Okay.
So that in some future version, some future version, if we do update it, there would be a 1.1. And I wasn't exactly sure how that was handled with in the XML in the original kind of SWID format, but I also sense there's a little bit of a divergence, so I didn't want to have one driving the other.
I see. So I think what you mean then is beyond the native support provided in Cdda, in the Cdda specification.
Oh,
Because
yeah,
CBOR
sorry.
does not really
Yeah.
mean. Okay, because
Yeah,
we were like, why?
my mistake. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so that makes this is what we thought, and so no, there is no versioning of the Cdda specifications, and that is intentional because versions are things that always are difficult to align in when you think about the IoT. So the idea is here to have a very stable core specification that you can extend with specifications again. And these specifications you can pull in or not. Every parser or encoding mechanism or decoding mechanism should be careful with things that are extensible and check what it knows, and just not assume that there are items in a map that you are familiar with, or even complete submaps that you're familiar with. So that's more like a scalable approach to versioning. Versioning should be solved outside of Cdda in general. There is sometimes a thing, some Cdda specifications use something like a qualified name for their structures. For example, if you define a protocol like update or delete, like CRUD messages with Cdda, you can give that operation a qualified name that also tells you I am the first of my kind. And another operation would be at the same operation name, but tells you, but I am the second version of my kind. That it is possible to do this with qualified names. Again, that would be per nested structure in the Cdda, for example, operations or payload types or unions or something. We are not doing this here with CoSWID because we have a very, very flexible extensibility mechanism that should allow for omitting versions. We are not elaborating about this in text because that is basically explaining how Cdda works in a spec that uses Cdda. So I think that's not the correct place to do that. Would you agree?
So let me replay that conversation. This CoSWID specification is just trying to come up with an alternative data model to what we already do in XML in the SWID format. And the SWID format in its XML manifestation doesn't have an explicit version number, and that it's probably, I guess, handled by some namespace versioning. And we are handling that namespace versioning that SWID does in CDL by, you're just going to recognize it by the fields that are in there?
Well, SWID has a identifier for different version, which is the year. That's because it's an ISO standard. So I think current is 2015. Some would say this is a version.
So how do we handle that here?
We say that the specification text says on what specification this is based, and that's the ISO version from 2015. The Cdda does not express this.
So how will we know, because I was under the impression from how Dave answered some of the earlier questions that ISO is going to update their version. So we're going to have a 2015 one, and our CoSWID thing will only ever align to 2015? Or are we going to, how do we future-proof it that when we do an update to this, because I assume there will be interest to do that, how will we recognize the 2022 update versus the 2015 update? Is it really just going to be, well, it's just there will be new fields, and that's how I'm going to see it, based on the normal CDDL way?
Exactly. So if the assumption is that it is very unlikely that the structure presented in the CDL today will change. And it is not intended to change, actually. There might be a critical error to all of this. And then we have to go to a BIS and actually change it. But I don't think that will happen, actually, to be honest, but you never know. The extensibility mechanism provided here will allow for another RFC, another ID that basically extends the current CDDL to the version that might be upcoming with ISO, but knowing that authors of the ISO spec are authors of the CoSWID spec, the ISO spec will basically align more to the CoSWID spec. And that will be the next version ISO. But we do not know how future version will look like. There's no assumptions made in the text how future version of ISO will develop. Therefore, we say that's not necessary here.
So just to be clear, I'm an implementer. I consume a CoSWID.
Yes.
When I consume it, I will not necessarily know whether it's the 2015 version or the updated 2022 version if we go there. I don't know that. The only way I'll know that is by what?
By the content you parse. So I think from a software point of view, you are a parser of CoSWIDs, and you are using the initial version, and you encounter a item that is allowed that is somehow creeping in via extension points you don't know. The any field could also so you encounter a new thing that you don't know, and you don't have an extension for that. This all will be captured by the any attribute. So you can parse it today due to the structure of the Cdda, but you don't know that's a future version. It's just an unknown attribute to you. If you are now the code that is updated, you now know that it's a future version. But again, arbitrary items go to the any attribute. So this layering mechanism, so to speak, allows you to not use versions anymore. It allows you to just be aware of the current state or not, and parse any attribute, any CoSWID you get in any case. You just have to do the careful parsing with the any attribute, as is always the case, even with the very initial version.
I understand that trickery. I guess in terms of kind of the magic that the CDL provides, I guess maybe I'm making more of a statement that I was left under the impression that everything that we have in SWID will have a representation in CoSWID. And what I'm hearing you say is yes, but. So I feel like we're losing information that I have in SWID in CoSWID, because in SWID I will have an explicit way to say I got the 2015 thing. And in CoSWID, we have an implicit understanding that I got the 2015 thing. And that's perhaps the point I'm drawing here.
Okay, but that is captured by the introduction that says this is based on 2015. We could add an attribute and say we never, but I think we already say this. This specification does not make any assumptions how the SWID ISO standard will evolve. And however it evolves, we can parse it due to the nature of our structure. And we already say that.
Okay.
Okay, if that's feasible to you, I think it's very feasible to things that are difficult to version update. So we don't expect CoSWID to have millions of branches and versions. So, but we adhere to the idea or the benefits Cdda provides, and that's basically the point why we don't have a version. If you would really be adamant on adding a version, that's a no-brainer. But it is, I think, actually a blocker long term.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if that's the design you want, my caution is I think that's going to break the future version. But if really what we want to do is have this very strict thing, like we have in our one hand the 2015 thing, and we're doing it based on the 2015 thing, and we're comfortable with the drift, I think that's fine, because then we'll have the IETF CoSWID, and then we have the SWID that's kind of something else. I mean, that's the drift I think we're talking about. But that's a design choice for the working group. I'm good.
Yeah, you will have to do a next. Yeah, but that's a comment now. We will have to do another RFC any case to update CoSWID, and you can still do that without versioning.
But so with one caveat, Hank, right? Which is if the semantic meaning changes of if ISO changes the semantic meaning of a data item in SWID between say 15 and like a 22, you can't make sense of that in CoSWID.
That is correct. Then you may have to make a biz with that, and you have to biz the original document.
But how would you know you have that? So if I packed a 2015 and made a CoSWID on the wire and it had field A, and I have no versioning information, then at some point, the meaning of A changed to be A prime. When I'm on the wire as an implementer and I read the CoSWID, because I don't have a version number, I don't know because I don't know whether it's 2015 or the new one that has the A prime definition, what A means. Is it A or A prime?
But you do, because you're doing a conversion, and the converter, of course, knows what version the new SWIT is. And if the converter does not know what it's converting into, the old SWIT, and doesn't throw an error, that's an implementation problem. And so, of course, you can't translate a new SWIT attributes from a future version that are not covered here. Of course, that's apparent. You can put them into the any field and just pass them through, yes. But also the converter would know, because you implemented that, and it knows that it parses a new thing now. And if you're not implementing that correctly, that is not a problem of the specification, actually, because a specification says this is equivalent to 2015, and the implementer hopefully read that when implementing the spec. So again, I think assuming that everything is updated correctly with versions in a lot of things is unlikely. It is I think more graceful to have a Cdda that allows for the any attribute here, which we inherited from the SWIT realm natively, actually. So I think still that this is a fine way to move forward.
Wait, so what's the converter we're talking about? I'm confused, because I thought that what was going to happen is some software producer was going to drop something in the file system for me, and it's going to be a CoSWID blob. And then I, not knowing how the CoSWID blob got read, find this blob on my file system, and then I'm going to take my implementation and I'm going to try to parse that blob. I have a 2015 implementation, which has the definition of A. I didn't know that the software producer made now instead of using the A definition, uses the A prime definition and put that blob in my file system.
You can't produce an A prime CoSWID, because there is no A prime CoSWID. There's only A CoSWID, because that's in the specification here. If you create an A prime CoSWID, it's something you made up, because there's no specification for that, right?
Well, right, but again, this is the future-proofing aspect of it, because we think we're going to have to update it, because in the discussion we said that there's a new SWID implementation coming. So how will I know I have a new thing?
You will have the new thing when you create the new thing, and this is created via software. So again, it's this converter thing. So when you have this notion of a version of SWIT and a version of CoSWID, then you need something that makes this connection, a software implementation that makes this connection, and that is the software what I was talking about. If you're just creating CoSWID and do not care about SWIT, you don't have this problem. You only have the problem when you have a new SWIT version, as you are postulating, and then you are creating with this new SWIT version something that as a mismatching semantic with an existing CoSWID, and that is uncatched. But that cannot happen if you adhere to the specification, because you're not creating CoSWIDs anymore. And therefore, because you're creating CoSWID A prime that feel or look like the same thing as the SWIT A prime you're postulating, but there's no specification covering CoSWID A prime. So therefore, it's an invalid CoSWID we're creating, and it's very fine not to understand an invalid CoSWID. I think that's appropriate.
So maybe, again, am I misunderstanding? Every time I drop a CoSWID on the file system, there's an equivalent SWID also there? So that's how I know? Okay. Then,
why?
Well, right, but so then I don't understand this implementation thing, because I field a piece of software that, and with that software, I got the CoSWID. So this is now, on my network, and I have my old implementation, the 2015 implementation. I have no knowledge whether SWIDs or CoSWIDs got updated. All I know is I have a file on my file system, and I'm trying to consume it. And when I consume it, the only understanding of field A that I have is the one hard-coded in my implementation. But unbeknownst to me, the CodeSWID work evolved, and A is no longer A, it's A prime. So it's kind of so how would I recognize that if I don't have a version number? Is it that if that actually occurred, what should have happened by the producer of the software, they should have recognized that issue kind of from SWID, and they would have created a different tag, and that tag would have been different. My 2015 implementation wouldn't have recognized it, and then it fails? Is that the fail-safe?
There is no fail-safe for something not doing versioning with the software. No, we do not build into the Cdda a solution for failing to do versioning. No, we are not doing that. So if you are putting out software onto a device that is actually consuming CoSWITs and therefore has to interpret them. And then if the software that you put out there is abandoned, for example, the company goes away and it's not maintained anymore, but it's still working. So, and now you have basically out-of-life software running, and then you encounter a CoSWIT that is newer, but the software is not updated and can never be versioned anymore because it's abandoned. Then you will have a problem. But I think when you arrive at that point, you already had so many problems beforehand that you did not solve with respect to software management and versioning, that's not the fault of the Cdda, the CoSWIT that is adhering to a BISD CoSWIT, which again is unlikely to happen, because that is the only problem here. If the semantics change, that is the only problem. If you add more semantics, that is not a problem with the original CoSWIT here. So if you encounter that scenario where you have an abandoned piece of software, not maintained, still running, not aware and not versioned due to the missing versioning of the new BISD CoSWIT IRC, then you have a problem. That is correct. There's no failure detection for that. If the semantic of tag IT changed somehow and we made that happen via a BIS, this software will never be able to understand that change. That is correct.
Yeah, so I think I've reached the same conclusion that we don't need a change, but for a different reason, because I think that if the existing SWID implementation changes to do this A versus A prime thing, the right thing that should happen from the CoSWID side is that we would use a different tag for that field, and then that would break the implementation, the older implementation that's trying to consume it, and that's perhaps how we would trigger it. And so we're relying on the CoSWID ports to catch that, and that's fine.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly, that is fine. The next version of Cdda would make sure that the previous version will fail. That is a very good way to do this, exactly, because we fail hard, and then the abandoned software that you should not use in any case anymore because out of life will now fail hard when consuming this. That is one way to solve it. Yeah.
So since we had to spend about 20 minutes on this before I got it, could we put a sentence into that effect that we would expect future CoSWID versions that are tracking kind of SWID would create kind of new tags if said semantics occurred? We explicitly aren't putting version numbers because that's not the CDDL way.
Yeah, I think what you could say is if the semantics of the already defined CoSWID change, this has to be expressed, or this could be expressed via, maybe not mandatory, but too prescriptively bad. This could be expressed via a new tag, and that is fine.
That's perfect. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay, good. Let's do that.
Okay, thank you. And sorry, but I think it's very important to talk about this because I think we had a mental disconnect here, and it's also for me very interesting to understand what that was. And again, I think it's 20 minutes well spent.
Yep. No worries.
Okay. Yeah, there is no date field in Cdda. We are using the time field as we are not having X as date in SWID. We are having SX. I think it's date time. I think X as date is not used in SWID.
Yeah, I'm trying to catch up on the URL link there. So I thought that the recommendation made on the mailing list
that is a different issue. Date has nothing to do with time. Date is like calendar stuff and such. So and time is about timestamps and such. So there are different types. And you were talking about excess date in the first place. So I was maybe taking this too literally. Maybe you meant what's it called in XML? Excess date time, I think, right?
Yeah, that's the recommendation, was to use excess date time, I believe. No?
Yeah, excess date time is the only time relevant value used in value used in the XSD. And we decided to go with the binary one, which is tag 1. Time tag
right.
1. But there's one thing that we actually elaborated on in the text there's a small discrepancy between 0 and 1. 0 is the standard ISO time and string, and that can express leap seconds, because you can say it's 60 seconds, but you can't express that with POSIX, and you just may have to make very sure that you do not issue a signed payload code to it on a leap second. That would be bad, because you don't know which second that is. Is it the one before or one after? You don't never know. There's no standard that tells you which second it is, actually, unfortunately. But for the sake of brevity and not using strings, oh my God, we are using time tag 1, and it's more than good enough. You just can't express leap seconds. Is that fine with you?
Sorry, I didn't see that change in the text. I'm just trying to find it here. That's all. Stand by.
That is a good.
Because I thought the resolution was clear. I just didn't think it got merged into the text. That's all.
I think we're simply using
integer time.
Yeah. I'm only with you. This is Dave's changes. Probably those are my changes. Actually.
Yeah, but I'm confused. Is integer time tag 1?
Yes.
Oh.
String time is tag 0.
Sorry. Yeah. Right. Okay. So that's why I didn't recognize it when I was reading it quickly. If it's tag 1, then that's it. I just didn't see that merged.
Actually, to be honest, the C-Boy also stumbled on this. To me, it's unintuitive. There was a reason for this back in the days. I don't know.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, if that's time, if integer time is tag 1, then we're good.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Okay. So that was the second item. Let me read quickly. This is covered.
Okay, so I missed how that got covered.
There are now, I think, a lot of this isn't Dave's stuff here, I think. It's close to the X path. I think I wrong window.
Yeah, my top line concern there was just that the field names looked different. Not that there was anything wrong with those field names, and we either fix the field names to be the same, or we call out to say, the mapping is a little different.
Here, you can see it. There's explicit text about process name, for example, added here at the end. This maps to, and we even have an XPath expression that tells you exactly what it maps to. We address that with every place where that happened.
So you're pointing to something and I can't see it.
Oh, I'm not sharing anymore.
No, you are sharing, but I'm
here. Can you see my highlight?
I haven't updated in a while, though.
Oh,
yeah,
maybe
I don't see it because I'm looking at version scheme right now.
That is not the thing you want to look at. Sorry, I will reshare.
Yeah. Please.
I'm so sorry. I was not aware. Thank you for highlighting. And now you can see my highlighting, I hope. Is that better?
No.
Oh.
It looks like it's frozen.
Okay, then I will simply stop sharing entirely. Swoosh. Did it stop for you?
Yes.
Good. Then I will reshare. Let's see if this works. And how does that look like?
It looks good but you're sharing the screen. So can you share the window so I can read it?
Whoop, there it is.
Thanks.
It's line 5 and there you see at the end that we always added something. This maps to, so this is our process name. It's an example here on this side. And this maps to the actual XPath expression in the SMIT of XML.
Check.
So that we were very thorough.
Yeah, check. I didn't notice that. Okay, that's good.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we moved the file entry stuff. There was another request actually also in the world that it's confusing how we ordered it. We mimicked the order of the SWIT ISO text, but that was apparently confusing. Let me look if I can find it here. No, that was not covered here, dang it. So we moved everything about file hashes into a single section now. And you were asking about, does file entry have a hash entry, but does oh, it's the other way around. Sorry, I'm not getting this right. Yes, in SWIT, there is the option to attach a file hash to the any attribute of every file. Actually, the SWIT specification itself uses the any attribute. The code SWIT specification is more specific here, but the option exists there. It's just weirdly
that's probably why I didn't catch it. I mean, because if that's in an any, I didn't read the SWIT spec clear enough. I probably just went to the file entry and just said I didn't see hash and didn't realize that it's any.
It's covered in English text and says use any and put this there, and it's like okay. We made this more explicit. Path elements. There is the path elements is just a helper structure. Maybe could go back to this full thingy here, and now here search for path elements. So that's a group. Path elements.
I see it. I see it in below.
Okay, this is basically we created that one because it used in two places.
Yeah.
And that's only because it's used here and there, and it's just we saved one line of text actually. So, but it's there. The redundancy is removed.
I see it. Thanks. That's helpful.
Okay, so that was done, but that's just an explanation of things that have been done for a long time. Somewhere, I think we fixed the ref for somewhere. It's an actual. It's an actual reference now, here, as you can see. It's not only I don't know what it was before, but now it's a real full-blown reference. And,
no, but I think the issue is that reference, maybe I'm looking at the wrong version. That references that website, and that website is not going to fly as a normative reference. So my advice was that instead of referencing that website, and I know that's the best reference, we instead say we're doing what's in the ISO spec, which will be a perfectly fine normative reference. And the ISO spec, if I'm not mistaken, actually references this website instead.
Yes.
But that way you get around the issue of you not having a good normative reference here.
Okay, then we misunderstood the issue, I guess. So because it said if this is used in SWIT, then that would be compelling argument to waiver it. So maybe the waiver it was not clear what actually is wavered. Yeah. So yeah, I have no strong feelings here referencing the ISO spec and saying we are doing it the same way as in not using somewhere, but this year SWIT is fine with me. It's a minor change to the text.
Yeah, that was in the -15. I talked a little bit about how other folks would ballot on that document, and there's a desire to point to something tighter. And if you do the reference where if we list the ISO reference, that will make it an okay reference. And if someone really wants to get the details through the ISO reference, you'll be able to click through that link that you already have. So we'll cover it as kind of an administrative thing in that way.
Okay, so basically what we're doing here is SWIT would basically, it's not somewhere, but we would say SWIT here and maybe a little bit more text above here. Okay, yeah, that's a no-brainer, of course. No problem.
I mean, there's no reason why you can't have an informative reference to semver in the inline text that actually explain it, but when we have to have a formal reference to explain that particular IATA registry, we use the ISO spec instead.
Understood. So this is the first open issue. Thank you.
No, the second one, because we're still going to include new text at the top for the versioning, right?
Oh yeah, thank you. Bill, just asking, did you capture these two actions? Otherwise, I will make a note now. Was Bill gone?
What I have in the notes is that the reference is a website, and the website's not a normative reference. The normative reference should be to the ISO SWIT spec. And the ISO SWID spec includes the SEMVer reference.
Okay, cool. Could you add like an action summary, like action on CBOR tag for next version and or the SEMVer item? So like if we have a small action item list here in the minutes, is that fine with you?
Sure.
Super cool. Thanks. And thanks, Roman, for reminding me about the CBOR tag, which I probably would not have forgotten. So yeah, I never know now. So next item, what are the normative requirements? Yeah, there are a lot of normative requirements now. And you're asking, is there something in SWID preventing normal guidance that says should or must sign?
Right.
Yeah,
so I
so
appreciate the new section. I appreciate the new kind of section describing how to precisely do the signing in CoSWID. So there's an analog to XML kind of SIG in kind of SWID. That's great. Now the question is, you've given the blob of how to do it right, but what's the operational workflow about when it should be applied? And is there something, some parallel we need to apply from SWID, or is there something new we should say here about that?
No, actually, SWID is as ambiguous as we are. So we are basically saying how you do it, and we are not with a single word mentioning that you must do it or recommend when to do it. That is due to the nature of SWIDs. For example, if you create an evidence SWID tag on your system, it's basically like a claim set for attestation evidence, because you are creating all the hash values for the files that are running right now. So they were executed at some point and are running right now. So I think that's better phrased. So that is a SWID that you can create ad hoc on for example, a target environment in Rats for claims, and that would be super fine. And that is not signed by itself. The attesting environment will sign the whole other things you bundled in there. So it probably would use an unsigned SWID with an evidence tag that is signed by a let's call it authorized entity on the producer side. So that is why we have no text in here when to sign, because the document cannot know when you sign stuff. It's the application usage scenario that basically tells you if you want to sign something or not. This is just the format and how to do it.
Right, that makes sense. I think what we could benefit from is a sentence in the security consideration that says something on the order of, this document only provides a data format. Any application that adopts it will need to strongly consider its operational environment and the security constraints that it operates under. The primitives to do integrity are here. So we want to distinguish and say defining the operational scope and some of the security considerations are out of scope of this document, because we're only strictly defining an environment agnostic data format.
Sounds fair. I think that is a sentence that we can drop in the security requirements. Yeah, there's nothing I could say against that. It is a well-put requirement. We will do that. Okay, got it. So we have 10 minutes left and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. Well, with our rate, not necessarily enough time. So let me check your next item, please. Oh, that's basically the same item. We would do that notion of how secure the provision and validation logic and how to make it trustworthy into the security requirements, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think just we need some logic to say it's a difficult problem to talk about trust anchors and how you get them. You need to do that. That's an application specific thing, probably done with policy.
Maybe collapses with the previous item, because I think it's actually in the same scope of and thank you for that, of the security considerations. Okay, moving on to this item here. Swoosh. And your newest comment is, Yes, we can explain what integrity means, or integrity protection in this case. Do you really think that is necessary?
Well, so what struck me is, the gestalt here is that we just have a data format and all of the application considerations are out of scope. But then later in the security considerations section, we actually talk about the behavior of the applications and how they can use that data. So if we are going to go through the trouble of talking about how applications will process it, I do think we need to say the very explicit thing, which is if you don't have, we need to say something on the order of what I have there, because we're talking about the application behavior. I mean, it's a choice. Either we talk about it and it's in scope, or it's out of scope. But if we start talking about it, I think we need to go down the whole bit of it being a self-contained blob of text.
Okay, thank you. I think that's valid. If you open that can of worms, you kind of have to deal with the consequences. Okay.
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, it was hard to follow, but I think your reasoning, I thank you for the connotation, really helps. This will go not to the considerations, but to this section, actually. I think that's better placed there. Okay, with this speed, we can actually make it through. The next item I have to look at, sorry for the moment. Yeah.
So this is a semantic play on, I understand the definition that you've created this word called authoritative code switch tags, which is meant to say the place that created them is the authoritative place. But again, this is back to the previous thing, which is to comment to say you can call it authoritative, which makes it seem like that's the place you get it for. But if you didn't sign it, there's no way of knowing whether it's authoritative or not, because I can modify it at will.
So this again collapses with there's a semantic discrepancy between the two items. Okay, yeah, I don't have an easy fix for that. I see the problem. I think there does not need many words, but I think we have to place it well. I think that's the actual challenge here, where to place the words. Okay. Yeah, I can't provide a answer right now. We will, but that's a really open issue then, and that's the first. Okay, I'm not worried still. And there's a init which we can cover then, and then there is, yeah, pub key is my fault. This is force of habit. I apologize.
Oh, it's straightforward. It's an easy fix.
Yeah. And the final item is implement and the use of signed tags whose signature is verified to use too.
So the challenges of some of the challenges were kind of laid out in that last paragraph, and all I'm saying there is that in addition to input sanitization, loop detection, actually adding signatures might help as a mitigation as well. So it's just input sanitization, comma, loop detection, comma, signed tags is a way to address these concerns.
Okay, yeah, then we can, yeah, okay, then I can, this is a place where maybe even address then section 6 problem, yeah. Okay, yeah, I see okay, that's almost a init. Okay, I will do this, and sounds actually doable. Maybe we will be done with this earlier than April.
Wonderful.
And thank you for making this happen, because I think this 45 minutes really did the trick. I think that helped a lot.
Excellent. All right. Is there anything we think we need to still talk about with that document? Because I think we're really close. Hello, is there anything else we think we need to talk about? Did we lose my audio or something?
No, you're there. I was wondering if Hank was going to say something, but it seems to me that we're at a good place to say goodbye and give everybody 5 minutes. I guess that 2-hour request wasn't so bad.
It wasn't. Sounds very productive. Yeah, thanks for running a great meeting. To the chairs. Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Chris.
All right, everybody have a good rest of your week. Take care.
Indeed. Have a great day.
Bye. Thanks all.
Bill, I assume the notes are in whatever the code MD or whatever it's called at this point.
It published and it opened up the link for it for the codemd.itf notes. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Okay. And I took notes as well, so I'll merge and deal with it.
Awesome. Hopefully it's all good.
Thanks for taking the notes. I'm sure it's good. Thank you.
Cool. No problems. Talk to you guys later.
Yep. Have a good one.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.